been bombing, firing missiles, and literally drowning civilians. It has tried to plunge our country into darkness and hunger. Ukraine has stood strong for more than 2 years. The Ukrainians are fighting heroically. The world has united in support of Ukraine since the first days of the full-scale Russian invasion.
In unserer Unterstützung für die Ukraine nicht nachlassen.
Our unity is a guarantee of our strength. Ukraine is fighting for a democratic future and for the European choice it has made.
We want to write that future together with you.
Ukraine's recovery is inextricably linked to EU membership. Together, we can build a stronger, safer, and more prosperous Europe. We're transforming Ukraine with the support of our international partners. We're building a new economy together. Ukraine's recovery will be the biggest project of the 21st century. We are strong together. We stand together, and we will win and rebuild Ukraine together. United in defense, united in recovery. Stronger together.
Please welcome on stage the Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, Olaf Scholz.
Sehr geehrter Herr Staatspräsident Zelensky, lieber
President Zelensky,
liebe
Volodymyr,
sehr
President of the Commission Ursula von der Leyen, representatives of governments and international organizations, of companies and municipalities, of associations and governmental organizations, dear friends of Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen.
Lugano, London und heute Berlin.
Lugano, London and Berlin, this is the third time that we meet as supporters of Ukraine for a Ukraine recovery conference since the beginning of the war of aggression against Ukraine.
Allerdings die erste dieser
However, it is the first of these conferences that takes place since Ukraine became a candidate for EU accession. And thus it is very fitting that this conference is taking place in an EU country for the first time. And I therefore bid you a very warm welcome to Berlin.
Es ist uns eine Freude und
It is a pleasure and an honor to have you here today, dear Volodymyr, together with the other representatives of Ukraine.
solche Reisen
I know such journeys in times of war are always very hard and stressful and also dangerous.
zu schätzen.
The greater we appreciate the fact that you're here with us today.
Lascavo
Prossimo. A very warm welcome goes out to all our Ukrainian friends and guests.
In dem Video haben wir gerade gesehen, mit welchem Mut,
In the video, we've just seen
Vermögen
the incredible courage, the incredible endurance that millions of Ukrainians are showing every day as they're going about their daily lives, going to work, defending their homeland. Trains are running, schools are open, operations are still being done in hospitals, factories are producing goods, and corn and grain is being harvested in the fields. Not in normal operation, however, war can never and must never become normality.
Ausdauer
But the Ukrainians are demonstrating such staying power that it is deeply moving for us and encouraging. One of many stories, almost to the day 2 years ago, a factory in Darnitsa, neighborhood of Kyiv, was attacked by Russia.
Waggons hergestellt.
They were the production of railway trucks took place there, and they were exported to the rest of the world. And they are still producing railway trucks there for the factory workers.
Produziert.
Continued production after the attack
Ohne Heizung
in
im Winter.
partially destroyed factory buildings without any heating during winter and with a patched-up roof.
Wie das überhaupt gehe,
When I asked the director of the factory how that was at all possible, he said, "It's in the people."
Dieser sagt viel aus über
That sentence says a lot about the Ukrainians who never give up, who defend their country and keep it running. And because that is as it is, ladies and gentlemen, we can say with certainty that Russia will not be successful with its imperialist attack. Ukraine is following the path that its people chose for themselves: democracy, freedom, Europe. And we are at your side on this path, dear Volodymyr. This is why we're here in Berlin today, to continue to work for the recovery of a strong, a free and European Ukraine. Strength, loyalty to one's principles. These are the preconditions for Putin to realize that there will be no military victory and no dictated peace. He has to end his brutal military campaign and to withdraw his troops. To convey that message is what the Peace Summit in Switzerland is about, where we will meet again this weekend. There, our partners and we will send the clear message to the rest of the world that we support international law and the Charter of the United Nations. And in this particular case, this means that we will continue to support Ukraine that is under attack as long as it takes. Never before have relations between Ukraine and Germany been as close and as trusted as they are today. Since the 24th of February 2022, we've supported Ukraine, provided 28 billion euros. More money will be supplied by way of civilian support. But what Ukraine's army most urgently needs today is ammunition and weapons, above all for air defense. And this is why we will be supplying a third Patriot air defense system to Ukraine, also an Iris TSLM air defense system, Gepard anti-aircraft cannons, missiles and artillery munition. All of that will be provided in the coming weeks and months. I would like to urge all those present here today that they support our initiative that aims to strengthen Ukraine's air defense. Please assist them and support them to the best of your abilities. For I believe that the best reconstruction is the one for which there is no need. In February, Volodymyr Zelensky and I signed an agreement about security cooperation and long-term support, as did more than a dozen of other countries. These agreements will provide insurance for the future of Ukraine, a future in freedom and peace. They will also provide insurance for entrepreneurs like you who are already in Ukraine, active in Ukraine, or are considering doing so. The recovery and the modernization of the country will require massive investment. The World Bank has calculated that almost $500 billion will be required for the next 10 years. The day after tomorrow, President Zelensky and I will meet again at the D7 summit in Apulia. I will speak out strongly there for far-reaching and long-term pledges of support for Ukraine. Given the dimension of the task we're talking about here, we'll also need to rely on private capital. The recovery of Ukraine is and has to be a business case too. And those will be front and center who engage right from the start, who develop economic ties to Ukraine now and expand it. As far as German business and industry is concerned, I can say that is exactly what they're doing. Hundreds of German entrepreneurs are actively engaged in Ukraine, employing 35 employees in the automobile sector alone. Despite the war, there has not been an outflow of German investments, and our trade volume has clearly markedly risen compared to the pre-war period. Ukraine is number one for investment guarantees issued by the federal government. The number of members of our Chamber of Commerce in Kyiv has increased by more than 60% last year. And all of that goes to show that the economy, that the business community is aware of the potential that Ukraine has to offer. Ukraine is a big country with a well-educated population. And despite the serious impact of the war, the economy is forecast to grow once again this year. It is above all investment in the construction sector that is boosting the economy, but Ukraine's agriculture too is a global player. It is an enormous achievement that the export of agricultural goods is back to pre-war level, and it is also very important for global food security. The Ukraine has great potential to offer in the field of renewables and hydrogen, but also in up-and-coming sectors like digitization and IT, armaments, health technologies, and pharmaceuticals. These areas will therefore be a special focus of our conference today and tomorrow. When one speaks about recovery of Ukraine, we also speak about the recovery of a future member state of the European Union. Only a few months after the outbreak of Russia's war against Ukraine, we pledged towards Ukraine that the future of Ukraine would be in the European Union. We stand by that pledge. Since then, Ukraine has set out on the path in the direction of the European Union, despite the difficult circumstances. Despite the war, it consistently implements reforms, and we support Ukraine in that endeavor because we are convinced that an efficient administration at all levels, consistent anti-corruption efforts, and inclusive society are all preconditions also for private engagement and for a successful recovery. With its Ukraine plan, Ukraine has clearly defined its reform agenda. In February this year, the EU promised and pledged financial assistance to the amount of €50 billion. This reform plan provides orientation for everyone, including private companies. We support private engagement in Ukraine wherever we can, especially small and medium-sized companies, and we've therefore concluded an international alliance today on the fringes of our conference, together with partners like the World Bank, the EU and the Japanese Agency for International Cooperation. We are, for example, supporting Ukraine's Business Development Fund, which is modeled on the German Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau, KfW. Without wanting to anticipate what you're going to say, dear Ursula, I would simply like to highlight that we are working intensively to improve the availability of equity capital for Ukrainian companies. Together with the EU Commission and other national and international partners, we are on a good path towards providing substantive incentives for private investments in key areas of Ukraine's economy. The Ukraine Business Guide, for example, lists the different promotional tools of the federal government who want to be active in Ukraine. Together with the United States, we have taken the initiative for the Business Advisory Council, which will provide advice and counsel for Ukraine and the donor countries. The first meeting took place yesterday, and they will be the voice of the business community and an engine for institutional reforms and economic modernization. The first chairman of the Business Advisory Council will be Dr. Christian Bruch, the president and CEO of Siemens Energy. If I may say so, I believe that to be an excellent choice.
Denn das Thema Energie steht für uns alle ganz oben auf der
For the topic of energy is right at the top of the agenda for all of us. Russia continues to, almost on a daily basis, attack the energy infrastructure in Ukraine. But despite these attacks, Ukraine's energy supply has been maintained by and large. We have been helpful in that regard, not only by repairing and protecting transformer stations that have been damaged and lines, but also by investing in decarbonization and energy efficiency and in a decentralized, resilient energy supply. By the way, Ukraine has already become part of the European Union in the electricity sector. Since we linked up the electricity grids in March 2022, Ukraine has time and again exported surplus electricity to the EU, thus contributing to energy security in our countries. And that illustrates something that is true for the recovery in Ukraine. Everyone benefits.
It's in the people.
It's in the people. That was the idea with which I began my statement. It is also characterizing our conference. Ukraine and Germany thought it important to have present today representatives of the regions, the municipalities, and civil society. And there's another group we must not forget when we speak about recovery and the opportunities linked to a recovery. I think of the many Ukrainians that have found refuge in our countries fleeing from Russia's terror. More than 1 million have come to Germany alone. No one is in a position to tell them today when the war is going to end, but what we can say is that it will end. We will rebuild Ukraine. It will be stronger, freer, and more prosperous than before. And millions of Ukrainians who live in our countries today can serve as living bridges, women and men, able to speak the language of the respective countries, who work in German companies now and who might tomorrow play an important part in the recovery of Ukraine. It's in the people. Welcome to Berlin. Slava Ukraini.
Please welcome now the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky.
Дякую тобі. Дякуємо вам.
Thank you, thank you, thank all of you. Thank you, Olaf. I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank you, Ursula. I would like to thank all our friends who are supporting us. I would like to thank Germany, and I would like to thank my people, all of you, for what you've done for Ukraine. Long live Ukraine.
You understood. But we spoke a lot, you know, our language almost. Дорогі Олафе, Ursula, шановні учасники.
Dear Olaf, dear Ursula, dear participants of the conference, it is a great honor for us to be here today, and I would like to thank you for your attention and for your support for the protection of the lives of the Ukrainians, the lives that have to prevail because we want to win this war. This war, dear friends, takes place at different levels of resistance. When we think of the people at the front, of the soil, the ground, the heaven, and the sea, we are fighting against military attacks of the occupying force, and our economic protection is important. We have to ensure that all the foundations of social activities remain: jobs, taxation opportunities, support for the entrepreneurs in order to drive the economy. Political resistance is what we are showing. We are all engaged in the effort to withstand the attempt to drive a wedge between the countries of the democratic world. We are fighting for humanity in the world, to allow the people in the country to continue to live a normal life, to show endurance, to prevail, to win the war. That is the kind of resistance we are showing. Resistance in all areas, in the military area, in protecting the country, in showing resistance also as members of civil society in the face of the battle and the war that is being waged. To continue to pursue a European lifestyle, a lifestyle that is being demolished and destroyed wherever Putin is active, wherever Russia places its foot. It begins with the division and hybrid warfare, as has been the case in Moldova and Georgia. And later, we witness a total war like the war against Ukraine. The front plays an important part. In 2 years of war, Ukrainians have proven that they are able to withstand the attacker and to advance in that area. We can force them to withdraw. We have regained the Black Sea. And we have furnished proof, thanks to the modern air defense system, that we are capable of bringing down Russian missiles. Now, what is important? Key abilities in order to be able to place Russia at a disadvantage and rob them of the strategic advantages that it has had. Advantage with regard to the airspace is therefore important, defending us from missiles and attacks via the air, which will allow us to make advances, military advances on the ground, because Russia aims to destroy the lives of people in our villages and towns. Hundreds of bombs are being showered upon the heads of the people of Ukraine. On a daily basis, we're witnessing destruction by missiles and drones. As long as we are not able to rob Russia of the ability to terrorize Ukraine, Putin will not have a genuine interest in sitting down at a table and to negotiate peace. But we won't allow them to destroy the lives of the people with its missiles. Air defense is really the answer for everything. And I would like to thank you, Olaf, for helping us, providing us with air defense capabilities. Germany is one of the global leading powers. You have supported us in the defense area. And I would like to thank all your industrial producers of military technology. Your IST system has been of great value to us. And I'd like to thank you for all the other equipment and weapons you've provided us with, because they have helped us withstand Russia's attacks from the air and on the sea. We have to do more. We need at least 7 Patriot systems in order to be able to protect our cities and urban centers from attacks via the air, in order to ensure that we can maintain our normal life, and our people have deserved us to undertake that attempt. Protecting their rights, the defense of the guarantees that a normal life can take place. And I would like to thank you, Olaf. I would like to thank the Federal Chancellor for the support you've shown to Ukraine in the area of air defense. Here in Berlin, we are also seeing that Mark Rutte is with us today, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, who has worked with the United States and other partners. We are in the process of enhancing Ukraine's air defense in cooperation with these countries. We are trying to bring more and new air defense systems to Ukraine. If we succeed in doing so, there will be more security for the people, greater certainty that peace will come back to our country. One of the most important targets is the energy and electricity sector of Ukraine. Energy resources, the generation of energy, is being used by President Putin as a weapon. He wants to bring us to our knees by destroying our energy supply. Ukraine is suffering under a destructive form and a destructive approach that Russia is taking with regard to the field of electricity. They've already been able to destroy 9 gigawatt of our capacity of electricity production. And last winter, we needed 18 gigawatt in the particularly difficult areas. We are not capable of producing that quantity. Now, figures don't speak a very clear language, but what am I talking about? Take Berlin. Berlin has 2 gigawatt in consumption. Munich, 3 gigawatt. We have much more than that, or need much more, and have lost much more than major cities in other parts of the world need. 60% of the heat produced, a third of the water power we have has been destroyed by President Putin, and that is not the end of Russia's terror. However, we have to draw a line. and have to invest and begin with restoring our energy production. We have to do whatever is in our power in order to maintain our electricity and energy supply, to make good lost ground in that regard. It's important, not only from our perspective. By attacking Ukraine, Putin attempts to not only destroy our electricity targets, but he also aims at other objects, such as gas storage tanks and interconnectors linking our system to Europe's systems. Recovery, reconstruction will be beneficial in a twofold sense. For Ukraine and for Europe, everyone will benefit, and that is the basis of electricity security, energy security for decades to come, and a guarantee that Russia's forces cannot trigger a blackout wherever they want to do so. We have what is required for modern energy systems, but we will need support, financial support, grants and loans. We are talking investments here, not promotional funds, but promising investments. We are a big market for your technology. We are a big market for your opportunities. You can build systems of the future and create thousands of jobs, produce an economic recovery, and in the short term, we will have a renewal that can come about quickly and that is not costly. This is what we have to aim for before winter breaks. This has to be achieved in the next 3 to 4 months, and we know how we can make sure that this happens. What we want from you is to provide us with the necessary equipment, the technology, the hardware that is required for heating plants and electricity plants that are not running right now. If we have that, we can change the situation overnight, can renew, can preserve the normal life of the peoples, generate gas so as to make sure that we can fill gaps that exist in the field of electricity later than begin with hydrogen and other forms of energy. So do more in those areas, get the support of European, of German companies, because they're leading in that sector, technologically speaking. We have a plan how we can, this year already, maintain 1 gigawatt of production capacity. I'm not only talking perspectives here, I'm speaking about solving problems. The war is taking place here and now. We can generate 4 gigawatts in the next few years. We can get there. We are already signing the first contracts in those areas, but as I said, we need your support because you're leading in those areas when it comes to, for example, exporting. We need your expertise, your knowledge, your capabilities. That will make all our countries stronger. Third, the political area. No matter how the political climate in Europe will change, the reality is the following. The European Union is something that all Europeans need, without exception. Every nation that shares common values with other nations and wants to live in peace like us. You know, Ukrainians, we are such a nation, as is our neighbor, the Republic of Moldova and Georgia, as are the Baltic countries and the peoples living there, all those nations and people who value peace and rule of law. We will see the day where Belarus will be free in Europe. I'm confident of that. Europe has done whatever it can, and as has my country. We are ready to begin accession negotiations with the European Union. We fulfilled all the necessary requirements. Negotiations are taking place, frameworks are being defined, but why do we need this? We keep our pledges and promises. That is another proof of the fact that Europe will not be brought to its knees through outside pressure. Fourth, motivation. In the 20th century, Europe has undergone dramatic renewal. A Europe that still had the wounds of the past, but it has risen to become a major power, a global community. Everything is working. You have your tradition of production, the trades and crafts, and here I think in particular of Germany. That is the right path to pursue, and you interact as Europeans with the rest of the world. In order for that to happen, you took concrete decisions, entered into concrete agreements, had concrete ideas and concepts by entrepreneurs in all your countries. When we, Olaf and I, planned this conference, and our teams planned this conference, I asked to ensure that this should become a practically oriented conference. Contracts, agreements should be the outcome that were to give us an impulse in the field of economic recovery and development in the interest of both sides, Germany and Ukraine. And I'm confident that this will be the outcome of this conference. Initiatives at the legal level, at the governmental level, but also at the municipal level. We have many agreements and contracts that have been drafted, that are ready for signature. Many partners from all over the world will leave this conference with many new contracts and agreements in their pockets for military equipment, weapons, for energy, renovating, recovery, refurbishment, for the reconstruction of modern energy production, initiatives in the social sphere, in the field of education, construction, housing, medical technology. I would like to highlight once again the support that the companies have shown to the economy in Ukraine. And as the Chancellor just pointed out, this is something that provides us with the strength to continue to live our lives in a time of war and to give us this idea that we can live a life in diversity. I'm absolutely certain that Ukraine will implement its national recovery plan. It will be a European recovery. It's not going to be possible without Germany's input. Global German strength. And I would like to thank you for your support. I'd like you for inviting me here. Thank you, Olaf. Thank you, Ursula. Thank you. And I address these words to all my partners, our partners. Thank you for your support for the people in my country. And I address my words also to the peoples of your countries. You've taken Ukrainians in with open arms, and that has been so important. That is what unites us. And we are honest. We are open, we are united and very, very brave. Long live Ukraine.
Please welcome now the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
Chancellor Scholz, lieber Olaf, President Zelensky, dear Volodymyr, First Lady, dearest Olena, Presidents, Prime Ministers, Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It has been almost 900 days since Russia's full-scale invasion began. But the stakes are just as clear as on day one. We know what the two sides in this conflict stand for. Russia fights to end Ukraine. Ukraine fights to end this war. Russia fights for the past. Ukraine fights for a better future. Russia destroys. Ukraine defends. And in no place is this contrast starker than in the embattled city of Kharkiv. 2 years ago, the people of Kharkiv pushed back Russia's aggression. And since then, they haven't only rebuilt, they have reopened new cultural centers, they have drafted plans for a greener city, a city that thrives on traditional industries as well as innovative startups. But Russia's bombs are now raining again from the sky, targeting apartment buildings and shopping centers. Putin wants to crush the city and its love for life and liberty. So Kharkiv and Ukraine need all our support. And this is what brings us here today to Berlin. Putin must fail and Ukraine must prevail. And we must help Ukraine to rise from the ashes and to be the master of its own future. This means, first and foremost, that we must provide Ukraine with the means to defend itself. At last year's recovery conference, I said we should transfer to Ukraine the proceeds of immobilized Russian assets. And now we are making it happen in line with international law and while ensuring stability of financial markets. Around 1.5 billion euros from the windfall profits will become available in July. 90% of these funds will go to defense, 10% to reconstruction, and later this week at the G7 summit, we will further discuss how Ukraine can benefit even quicker and even more from the proceeds of the immobilized Russian assets. We have always said my friends, we have always said that Russia must be held accountable for its crimes, and now we make Russia pay. Ladies and gentlemen, the rationale of this conference has always been to look beyond Ukraine's immediate needs and chart a credible path towards its economic renaissance. In London last year, I presented the new 50 billion euro facility for Ukraine to provide predictable support until 2027. And member states supported, also thanks to your tireless efforts, Olaf. Thank you very much for that. The facility is backed by a solid plan for reforms and investments. It's now up and running. 6 billion euros have already reached Ukraine. And here in Berlin, we are now signing the first agreements worth 1.4 billion euros with our partner banks to attract investments in Ukraine from the private sector. And as you have already mentioned, Olaf, we will also launch dedicated support for equity investments in Ukraine. Our partner banks will be able to apply for EU budget support when they invest in equity funds active in Ukraine. And in that way, we, the European Union, help them remove some of the risks associated with equity investment. Our aim is to improve access to finance for Ukrainian businesses, especially for SMEs and startups, that can help modernize Ukrainian economy. It is so crucial for Ukraine's recovery. Take, for example, areas like IT or digitalization. Take renewable energy. Take the whole topic of critical raw materials. We will start with a pilot to address the most urgent needs, which can be scaled up over time. And I know the business community wants to step up its contribution. And together, we will mobilize the financial firepower that is necessary to help Ukraine resist and to recover. You can count on us. This includes, of course, also continued material support in view of Russia's systematic attacks on Ukraine's energy grid, and you just, dear Volodymyr, described it. So we have raised close to 500 million euros so far for the urgent repairs. In addition, we are providing 1,000 more generators for urgent power generation, and thousands of solar panels are about to arrive in Ukraine. The aim is to help decentralize the power system and thus increase the resilience of the Ukrainian electricity and power system. And today, I can also announce that we will deliver to Ukraine an additional 1.9 billion euros from our Ukraine facility by the end of this month. This is because of the comprehensive reforms and investment strategy that Ukraine has approved. And my dear friends, Ukraine has done all these reforms while fighting a war. This is so outstanding. Thank you very much for being so reliable. This reform and investment, we call it the Ukraine Plan. The Ukraine Plan, for example, includes justice sector reforms, anti-corruption reforms, and many other reforms. And this is the basis of making Ukraine attractive for business and investors. And it is also bringing Ukraine closer to our European Union. Ukraine has fulfilled all the steps that we had set out. And this is why we believe the European Union should begin accession talks with Ukraine already by the end of this month. President Zelensky, dear Volodymyr, this is the first Ukraine Recovery Conference that is held inside the European Union. And this is where your country belongs. Kharkiv is Europe, Ukraine is Europe, and our union is your home. Slava Ukraini. Long live Europe.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage for the first opening panel, United in Defense, United in Recovery, Stronger Together, the Federal Foreign Minister of Germany, Annalena Baerbock, the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs of Italy, Antonio Tajani, the Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs of the United Kingdom, David Cameron, the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Poland, Radoslav Sikorski, and the Special Representative for Ukraine's Economic Recovery of the United States of America, Penny Pritzker.
So, good morning, everybody. I know we are at a serious conference, however, there's a call for Italy now, the foreign minister. In the meantime, I would like to start because we have a really packed agenda and we are here all for work. As the Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen put so precisely, while Ukraine fights every day to end this war, we see since 900 days that Russia is fighting every day to end Ukraine's lifeline. And when I've been, for the 7th time since the beginning of the war in Ukraine just 3 weeks ago, the Foreign Minister of Ukraine, my dear friend Dmytro, and I, we have seen also what it means again and again that Russia is attacking for 900 days the lifelines at the thermal power station Tripilska, just 20 kilometers away from Kiev. For years, the station has supplied 3 million people with electricity, our normal daily lifeline. On April 11th, Russia fired 82 missiles and drones on it. And 82 missiles and drones couldn't be stopped. So when we went there, we saw a thermal power station for 3 million people with the ceiling perforated with holes, where there were only skeletons of machines left. A lifeline for 3 million people destroyed. And as the Commissioner President, the Chancellor, and the President of Ukraine have underlined, this is not by chance. This is for a reason. To attack Ukraine on 3 levels. To attack Ukraine's sovereignty, to conquer the territory, to attack Ukraine's infrastructure like in Tripilska, power plants, rail lines, schools, to attack the country's economic and social life, and to attack on the 3rd level Ukraine's future in the European Union. Because the Russian president knows that the European Union is a life insurance for peace and freedom. And as we are here to discuss these 3 dimensions, I'm very happy that I have a distinguished group of foreign ministers and friends here with me who are capable of jumping through these 3 different aspects of economic strength and power, of reconstruction, of political dimensions for the European pathway, and also the military issue of defense, especially air defense. So I'm very happy to have you with me here on the panel, and I would like to ask you all to cherry pick on the topics you're most capable to speak on when we're standing here united in defense, united in recovery, stronger together. I would like to start with the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, with you, Dmytro. Even though we are seeing the destruction every day, we are also seeing the reconstruction every day. Maybe you can give us here an impression for the business people, but also for so many mayors and city councillors who are doing the reconstruction. What does it look like to have a short-term reconstruction and also having the long-term needs in your mind? So how would you like to bridge them even more successfully in the future?
Thank you. Thank you, Anna-Lena. Thank all of you who have gathered today in this hall for this important conference. Well, the short-term need is clear, and my president spoke about it, and Chancellor and President of the Commission mentioned it as well. Support to our energy system, because winter is coming, and we have to go through it. But when it comes to a long-term perspective, which doesn't mean that it has to be postponed, it has to be continued, there are 5 processes, 5 steps that need to be continuously made. The first one, the road to recovery starts with air defense, because the less is damaged, the less it takes to recover. And therefore, please make every effort to follow Germany's example and deliver additional air defense systems to Ukraine in the shortest perspective. Second, investments. I would like to call on businesses not to wait until the war is over to invest in Ukraine. Start working now. Find the project, look in the community, look at the business that you want to work with, conduct feasibility study, develop your business plans so that you will be ready at any given moment to invest. Third, of course, macro-financial assistance, and we count that governments and the European Commission will continue to provide it. Fourth, membership of Ukraine in the European Union. This is an instrument, a very efficient instrument of recovery. And fifth, Russia's frozen assets. We should be ambitious, we should be bold, we should find a solution so that Russia pays in real life with real money. These are the 5 ways to recovery. We are advancing on all of them, but we need to do it faster.
Thank you very much. And maybe to jump into it into more detail, because we have seen the big projects like reconstruction and partnership of some hospitals and also of some big power plants. But as we are seeing that Ukraine is really built on the small and medium-sized enterprises and companies, maybe you can also underline a bit with regard to loans and funds, and also with regard of employment in your country. What could be a support package also for small and medium-sized entrepreneurship?
Yes, please trust in the entrepreneurial spirit of Ukrainians. We know how to do business. We have people who are keen to recover, to rebuild their country. And of course, creating favorable conditions for them, helping them to access capital, loans, is fundamental importance. And here comes another encouragement towards foreign governments from my side. Please launch programs and incentives for your businesses to invest in Ukraine, but also to help Ukrainian businesses to grow up and to implement projects. They can do this job if we send a clear signal and we provide clear incentives to that end. We as the Ukrainian government are doing our utmost to mobilize all the resources that we can to create these conditions. With your help, we can multiply this effect in geometrical progression.
Thank you. Speaking about investment also in small and medium-sized enterprises, Radek Sikorski, Foreign Minister of Poland. Your country has been one of the countries joining the European Union within the last decades, and we have celebrated it together 6 weeks ago. I would have two questions in my mind. First, maybe describing, even without a wartime, why these investments are so crucial also on the pathway towards European Union process. But also as a second thought, when we celebrated the entrance of the 10 Eastern European countries to the European Union back in 2004 and now in 2024, we had all this thought in our mind when we're standing at the Oder Bridge between Germany and Poland. What would it have meant if Poland wouldn't have entered the European Union? Maybe you can intensify a bit on the discussions within your own country, what it meant for your country, not only for the last 2 decades, but especially since the last 2 years.
History and geography matter, also between Poland and Ukraine. So in Poland, we remember keenly that Russia has been trying to colonize Ukraine for 300 years. In the 19th century, it was actually forbidden to publish in Ukrainian in the Russian Empire. Then they did it again in the 20th century. During collectivization, the Bolsheviks killed roughly 5 million Ukrainian farmers and exterminated Ukrainian cultural elites. And today they are doing the same again. You just have to look at what they're doing in the occupied territories. This is cultural genocide at the very least. And geography matters too. When you look at the world from Warsaw, 250 kilometers to our north is the Kaliningrad exclave, Russia, with a storage place for, we think, roughly 100 tactical nuclear warheads. If you go 250 kilometers east, you have Belarus, where the Russians and the Belarusians have engineered an assault on our border, the EU border, the Schengen zone border. And then 250 kilometers to the southeast is the Ukrainian border. And some of these Russian missiles that you mentioned actually cross into Poland. They sometimes go through Poland and attack Ukrainian cities, and sometimes they are let loose. One of them landed 10 kilometers from my house, which is in western Poland, 250 kilometers from here. So I'm putting to our German hosts that this is far closer. The danger is much bigger than some people think. And yes, Poland wants to be a hub for Ukraine's reconstruction, just like it is today a hub for the supplies of the resistance effort. And we think we have some advantages to bring. First of all, the roughly 2 million people who have been to Poland, either before the war in our labor market or as refugees now, there will be links, family links, that will enable economic activity. Secondly, we have, as you mentioned, a recent experience of negotiating and of fulfilling the EU entry criteria will be helpful to the Ukrainian state structures. And thirdly, we know what it takes to fulfill various criteria. For example, we have reliable and inexpensive technologies for water treatment, for food processing. Those are the kinds of things where I think Poland and Ukraine are made for each other.
Thank you very much, and also thank you for remembering us that it's only 7 hours by car from here, Berlin, through Poland to the Ukrainian borders, and it's way longer to drive down than at least to the south of Italy. So moving on the European Union on towards south, Foreign Minister of Italy, dear Antonio, your country also now as the chair of the G7 at the moment. What do you think are the most important tools to support Ukraine with regard to investment, also to support companies investing into Ukraine, and combining this together with the reform process for the European Union accession?
First of all, I want to thank Germany for organizing this third Ukraine Recovery Conference. Next year, Italy will organize the fourth session. This is an honor for us. But first of all, I totally agree with Dimitro when he says the first strategy for the recovery, for the reconstruction, is to protect Ukrainian infrastructures, Ukrainian buildings, through air defense system. For this, I want to inform you, Italy is ready for sending a new military package with something for air defense of Ukraine. On G7, Italy, in the next days, there is a G7 with the head of states in Italy, but during our G7 with the Minister for the Affairs, we pushed hard in favor of Ukraine, in favor of the reconstructions, in favor of our involvement, because to protect Ukraine is to protect Europe, to protect democracy, to protect the international law. And I think we are ready as the second industrial country in Europe for a strong engagement through our big companies, but also through our small and medium-sized companies. There are 4 million of small and medium-sized companies. There's a big delegation here ready for investing in Ukraine. And Italy is ready not only for a military help, but also for helping the other different sectors. There is the second news is a new package, 140 million euros, of course, for action on infrastructures, on railways, on health, agri-food sector, humanitarian sector, and also on the mining. This is the last decision of Italian government. Of course, there are also 45 million euro for the reconstruction of Odessa Cathedral. Today, we signed a memorandum with the Ukrainian government for our cooperation in these very important sectors. Also, at a cultural level, I want to underline this point because for Italy, it is important to back the reconstruction of the Cathedral of Odessa as part of UNESCO. And for this, I think Italy wants to, through our 2 museums, Triennale di Milano and Museo Maxi in Rome, and with UNESCO, we are ready for doing more for the reconstruction of this city. Is an Italian city, Odessa. For this, for us, for Italy, is very important to work in this city. Cultural heritage is very important because Ukraine is part of Europe, and we are ready through our action for paving the way for the full partnership of Ukraine in the European Union. Your market will be very important in the future. The internal market for our companies is crucial. Our engagement is not only, of course, a support for Ukraine, but it's also an opportunity for our companies to be present in Ukraine. Count on us, count on Italian big companies, but also small companies supported by 3 state companies, each such as Siemens. They are supporting at the finance level our company for the internationalization. And for me, the diplomacy of growth is crucial, and count on us, we will work hard for Ukraine. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you very much, and we can hear from the applause that there's a high need of being very precise on how to support Ukraine, because promises won't rebuild. So thank you for going also in the details of state support for big companies. Maybe to drop here, this is why we, for Germany, also focused on export guarantees for bigger companies, but especially for smaller ones, to support 40,000 businesses with low interest rates loan for the small and medium-sized companies. And as there are many people in the room who do have companies or who do invest, please do outreaches to your governments in this regard, because we know that the investment has to be on the ground as soon as possible. Speaking about investments on the ground, David, Foreign Minister of the UK, you have not only been the host of last year's Ukraine Recovery Conference, but also when you have done your first trip to Ukraine in November 23, you announced as one of the first projects the cooperation between British insurers and Ukrainian state banks to cut costs of damaged ships. And we know also what followed afterwards, also in the combination of defense, air defense, but also with different sorts of military support in the Black Sea, and then the combination of military support for the Black Sea and the insurances. So maybe you would like to highlight a bit why it was so important to address insurances directly, and also what examples could follow out of the things you have done. And I would really like to applaud you for the efforts UK did in the regard of the Black Sea.
Well, thank you, Annalena, and thank you for welcoming everyone to Berlin. As you say, you're building on the strong foundations of the London Ukraine Recovery Conference, which I think marshaled over $60 billion for Ukraine, and it's brilliant that you brought everyone together here. I mean, my view is very simple, which is Ukraine is fighting a war on the land, a war on the Black Sea, and here a war for the future, and we want to help Ukraine win all of those wars. And I think we can. When I look at the picture, I mean, the cards are very much stacked in our favor. When it comes to this war for the future, we have got deeper capital markets, we've got stronger economies, we've got better alliances. I mean, look at the array of businesses in this room. The question for us is, are we going to have the courage to play all these cards, and are we going to have the patience to make sure that Ukraine wins in the long run? Those are the crucial things. Now, you mentioned the insurance issue. I mean, this was based very much on Ukraine's success. It wasn't, some UN negotiation that cleared the Black Sea. It was the brave action of the Ukrainian Navy, backed by capable allies like Britain and others, that has sunk 25% of Putin's Black Sea fleet, pushed it back across the Black Sea and opened up the grain corridor so Ukraine can export again. And that's why Ukraine's economy grew by almost 6% last year. So we're working with an ally in Ukraine that's hugely capable, hugely entrepreneurial, and wants to rebuild for the future. But I think the question for us, and Dmytro makes this point very well, is we know what Russia's trying to do. They are trying to destroy the energy system. They're trying to take the coking coal that is crucial for Ukraine's iron and steel industry, and they're trying to destroy the gas storage in Ukraine as well. They're going after, with toughness and precision, Ukraine's key assets. And we have to ask ourselves, are we being equally tough and precise in return? We have rightly switched off a lot of Russian oil, but it's time to make sure we totally switch off Russian gas into Europe as well. Germany's been a shining example, but we need to do more. We also need to use these frozen Russian assets. We should be asking ourselves, what are the things that Putin dreads us from doing? He dreads us cutting off the oil and gas and the hydrocarbons. He dreads us going after these frozen Russian sovereign assets. And I hope as a very minimum at the G7 this week, we can agree that we use the interest from the frozen assets to roll up an enormous loan for Ukraine, and the money can flow way before we get elections in America in November. But we should also be going after Russia's shadow fleet. These ships are largely uninsured, they're unsafe, they're environmentally dangerous. I want to know every time they go to a neutral port, they're being inspected, they're being impounded, they're being stopped from taking Russian oil and sold around the world. We've got to ask ourselves on every one of these things, are we being as tough, as strong as we possibly can be? As I say, we have the cards in our deck. The strongest economies, the best alliances, the deep expertise, the knowledge, we've got to bring all of that to bear. Britain will play its part. We are with insurance, and it's great that Lloyd's Insurance, who are here today, helped with the Unity insurance for the Black Sea. We'll help with the city bridge we've got between the financial centre of London. We'll help with the tech bridge, which I've seen for myself in UK, and a lot of tech companies helping Ukrainian companies. And we'll help in every way we can. We've invested $15 billion so far. My Prime Minister will be announcing the next stage of that at the G7 at the weekend. Sometimes Prime Ministers take the announcement of the Foreign Secretary. I know that because I used to do it, so I don't, but we'll be making a generous contribution to reconstruction. And as we've already said, with the £3 billion, 4 billion euros, that we'll be investing in defense for Ukraine. That is this year, next year, and every year in the future for as long as it takes until Putin is defeated. And I think that's the approach we've got to take. Making sure this money is not just this year and next year, it's how long it takes, whatever it takes. And the battle for the future, this reconstruction of Ukraine, is in many ways, it's the thing Putin most dreads. He knows a successful Ukraine, a reformed Ukraine, a financially successful Ukraine, all those things it can be, is the greatest possible defeat. And I just make this last point. We're here with a lot of numbers being thrown about money. Will it be 60 billion that we raised in London, the 15 billion that the UK has spent, the billions, you're going to hear lots of numbers. I just tell you there's one thing. The numbers we are talking about will be nothing compared to the numbers we would have to invest if Ukraine isn't successful. In defense alone, during the Cold War, we were investing 5% of our GDP in defense, never mind 2% or 2.5%. So what you spend now, we will save later, and we'll see a successful Ukraine as a result.
Thank you very much for being so sharp and moving from a country which unfortunately left the European Union to a country which is on another continent. However, the US, the largest donor for Ukraine and also therefore the biggest supporter for our European peace and freedom project in these times, as the US Congress approved funds of approximately 175 billion US dollars. 67% are designed for military and defense expenditures, and the other part obviously for economic and humanitarian support. And the US is also leading in coordinating energy sector support within the G7. Penny Pritzker, this is your main job for the US administration, the support for Ukraine, and obviously you're in for a long run, which we hoped for, and you underlined it in the last weeks. So how do you think we can ensure altogether the economic support for Ukraine, and how do you see also the role of the private sector, and maybe to accelerate, as David Cameron has underlined, also the private investments?
Well, thank you very much, and it's great to be here. I first just want to thank Germany and thank you for hosting the conference this year, and also for your partnership. Germany has really been an extraordinary partner to all of us as we step up to help Ukraine, whether it's in helping create a business advisory council or the life-saving Patriot systems that you have provided for Ukraine, or extending guarantees to your German companies so they can make investments, and of course, housing over 1 million refugees. It's really, we're very, very grateful for all that Germany has done. You know, I think we're at a pivotal moment when it comes to supporting Ukraine. And I just want to put it in perspective. If you think about what's happening over the next 3 or 4 weeks, I think it sends a very strong message. All of us send a very strong message to Putin, and it begins with this conference. And the message is really about the international commitment to Ukraine. This conference is step one, which is a real discussion about the economic issues and how we can coordinate ourselves to not just support Ukraine, but do so effectively and efficiently. The second is later this week, as we've discussed, the G7 meeting that will occur in Italy, which should have very important conversations about Ukraine, not the least of which around Russian sovereign assets. The peace talks that will occur in Switzerland the following week that will have over 100 countries participating, almost 50% more than participated in the last conference, showing the momentum of the world behind defining peace, supporting Ukraine. And then, of course, the capstone with the Washington NATO summit, which will be where Ukraine will be such an important part of the conversation. The point being, I know, we're somewhat all distracted by the election super year that we're in, the EU, the UK, the US, and I could go on and on, India. But the international community is not losing faith, nor is it losing interest, nor is it distracted from what is going on in Ukraine. And this fight against Putin is top of mind for so many of us. And I'll take the US as a case in point, which is, if you look at the vote that occurred for the supplemental in just last month, 70% of our Congress, both houses of our Congress, supported the supplemental bill, over $60 billion of support for Ukraine. And I think that not only demonstrates our support, but it's also an indication of where the American people are when it comes to supporting Ukraine. And, the American people understand what's at stake. And they're not making this commitment out of an act of charity. They're making it out of understanding that this war of aggression poses a very serious threat to the United States and to our allies in Europe, to our way of life, to our economic security, and to our freedoms. And we know that. And I don't want there to be any ambiguity about it. And that's why the US, as well as our allies and friends here in this room, are rushing military, economic, and energy support to Ukraine. We get what's happening. We understand how serious the situation is. Let me just give the dimensions a little bit of that support. The military support, just in the last 45 days, the United States has sent over $2 billion of military equipment to Ukraine. On the economic front, which is what we're here to talk about at this conference, we're working with Ukraine to disperse the $7.8 billion of budget support, and as well as our one is to make sure that we target our $1.5 billion of economic recovery assistance precisely where the Ukrainians want to see it. We've also extended the 232 steel tariff exemptions just 10 days ago, allowing for imports of Ukrainian steel without tariffs. We're working with the Ukrainian government on a pre-project preparation framework. It's not just us, together with the EU, the UK, and Ukraine. We're trying to make sure that there are more ready, bankable projects to be financed. There's a lot of money right now, but we need more projects that are in a position to be financed. We're also launching new significant war risk reinsurance facility, which will multiply the marketplace for insurance. In addition to supporting SMEs and women's inclusion, women, have founded more than half the new businesses in the last year in Ukraine. So it's an enormous role for women to play. There's an enormous need for skilled development, which our private sector is quite invested in making sure happens. Also, given the energy situation, which is really, really dire, I'm announcing here that the United States is dedicating $824 million to support Ukraine's energy infrastructure. And I'll just say, look, all of this effort by not just the United States, but all of our allies, whether it's militarily, economically, on the energy front, it all depends on Ukraine continuing to embrace reform, which the Ukrainian government is doing. Ukraine has passed tough reforms, and they're going to keep the momentum up because I know they want to, it's essential for EU accession. It's urgent to tackle the corruption, the customs evasion, the gray markets. But Ukraine will also do it because 8 out of 10 of the population wants to see them take these very tough steps. I think one of the challenges for all of us is that as we all make our collective commitments to Ukraine reconstruction, it's certainly predicated upon having good stewardship by those who are managing the reconstruction efforts across the Ukrainian government. And the quality of leadership in Kyiv has to continue to reflect the integrity, unity, and democratic values that represent a true break from the Soviet era into the European and Western era that the Ukrainian people so desperately want and desire. So let me close by just saying that I believe that the combined support of all the countries represented on this stage and the acceleration of reforms and anti-corruption efforts in Ukraine, together with the stepped-up efforts of our private sector. The private sector has shown up here in force and is shown their interest. I think with all of that put together, we can provide the fuel that will power Ukraine into a true economic recovery and to become the prosperous, democratic, independent country that's integrated into the EU and NATO that its people want and deserve. So I thank you for hosting us, and thank you for giving us a chance to come together and make all of our efforts even more impactful by working together.
Thank you very much, Penny Pritzker. And as you were so diving into also the reform process, I would like to underline that by 2 questions with regard to what Ukraine is doing. I mean, being in the midst of a war, defending your own country every day, and in that situation, harmonizing your industry standards with EU rules, reforming your judicial system, implementing safeguards against corruption, enabling that Ukraine, speaking about women, will enter also into the Istanbul Convention. This is obviously a very, very big task. So maybe just a very short question and short answer. What would you need more for support to help Ukraine in this reform pathway, which we all know is not very easy, even in peacetime, Dimitro?
Well, President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, I think made the best comment on reforms, and you just echoed her, that despite all these struggles we are facing, Ukraine has undertaken some enormously complicated reforms that allowed us to reach the point when the European Union has all the reasons to make a decision to open accession talks with Ukraine. When it comes to the next steps, I have one very simple request to all: believe in Ukraine. Do not get upset. There has never been a case when Ukrainian partners would not find a way out of the reform-related complexity. We always find the way out. Believe in Ukraine's capacity to outperform your expectations and even sometimes our own expectations. Thank you.
But having friends at your side is also very helpful. And therefore, I would like to ask this question also, Radek, to you. Knowing, as I said, and I mean that very much from the bottom of my heart, because we are all politicians as well, and we know that sometimes reforms are not the most easy things, even in times of peace. Radek Sikorski, from your perspective, again, from the reform process of your country, and also knowing sometimes political struggles in our democracies, what would you like to maybe give also as an advice to others, how to support this reform process, maybe also in the more tricky parts of judicial reforms, anti-corruption, but also capabilities with regard to administration? Like, again, we do have this University for European Matters between Poland and Germany in Frankfurt Oder and Slubice. So maybe you can dive a bit into what helped you on your pathway towards the European Union as an example for others, be it local communities, investors also, or governments to support Ukraine's accession pathway.
Well, first of all, Dimitra is right that Ukraine has already proven that she can do tough reforms. Let me remind you, we closed the text of the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement with Ukraine, the association agreement, during the previous Polish presidency of the EU in 2011. And part of that was Ukraine getting visa-free regime with the EU, and that required huge reforms, biometric passports, databases of passport issued, and so on. And Ukraine did it, which is why it was easier to welcome the refugees when the emergency came. So yes, they can do it. They've also implemented most of the DCFTA. But you're right that the easiest way for Ukraine to lose the support of the European Union and all of us would be for the hydra of corruption to rear its ugly head again. And Ukraine needs to be very sensitive to that. And my advice would be, which I think was, the phrase was coined, I think in the Clinton administration, don't let this emergency go to waste. You will sometimes have to carry out politically difficult reforms. Do it now, when you have a national consensus that you want to join the West, whatever the cost, because after the war it will be harder. Politics, normal politics will return, and it will be harder. Better to do it now.
Thank you very much. Speaking about the perspective, and this is why we're here to support Ukraine's fight for peace and that this war will end. And I would like to move over to a colleague here in the audience because we are also in the eve of another peace conference in Switzerland, and we all know that the future of Ukraine does not only lie within the European Union, but also that the future will have a peace that is just, comprehensive and lasting. And for that, it doesn't only need the European friends, the friends here at the stage, but worldwide friends. And therefore, we are really thankful that Switzerland is hosting the next Peace Summit. And I would like to give the floor very briefly to Ignacio Cassis, the Foreign Minister of Switzerland. But I don't see, yeah, there's a microphone.
I'm here. Madam Chair, dear Annalena, dear colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Well, there are many ways to support Ukraine. As a neutral country, Switzerland is not allowed to militarily support Ukraine. This is the reason why we are looking for other ways. 4 months after the beginning of the war, we dare to organize the first recovery conference to think about recovery, reconstruction, resilience, rebuilding. We were told to be crazy at that time. 4 months of the beginning of the war, already talking about recovery. Now we are in Berlin. Thank you, David, for organizing last year the second conference in London, and thank you so much, Annalena, for this third conference, which you already announced 2 years ago in Lugano. And this is a promise which was very important in order to give prospect to the people. Now, another way we can support Ukraine is humanitarian demining. We are very active on this field, and we will organize in October this year in Lausanne, Switzerland, the second international conference on humanitarian demining after the first one held in Croatia. I see Gordon in the room. Thank you, Gordon, for organizing this conference in Zagreb. And then, of course, the topic which is expected to be held in very few hours. It will start on Saturday this week in Switzerland, in the region of the Lake of Lucerne, on a mountain. We have to climb up on a mountain to find common ground in order to kick off a process, a peace process. Well, it's not an easy task. You can imagine there are many critics about that, because should Russia be present? At which time during the process should we invite Russia on this peace process that should start this week? Well, this is one of the topics we will discuss at the conference, and at the same time we will also discuss ways of giving prospect to peace. We dared to talk about recovery 4 years ago. It is time now that we have the courage to talk about peace. And I count on you to be present at a very high level. By now we have almost 90 registered countries that will participate, most than half of them at the level of chief of state or chief of government, and then the other one at the level of ministers. So I guess it will be a good occasion not to go to waste in order to kick off this peace process. Thank you so much for your interest.
Thank you very much, Ignacio. As we have heard from the Chancellor in his opening speech, it's in the people of Ukraine. And we have all seen, and I would also say felt that over the last 900 days, the soldiers, the engineers, the nurses, but also the children. And I always remember one girl in Kharkiv telling me, the only wish I have is to just play volleyball again like we did before. And this is to remind us that this could be us. 7 hours away from Berlin, even just a jump over the border from Poland. So it's not only that it's in the people of Ukraine, but there's also a slogan in the train when we all go to Ukraine, be brave like a Ukrainian. So for the last 5 minutes, so 1 minute each, I would like to ask you, if you remember, it's in the people, so it must be also in us. And as an example of being brave like a Ukrainian, what would you wish from your own country, or maybe also from the distinguished guests here, 1,500 guests in business, in local communities? What next brave step that they would take to ensure that Ukraine will win this war? And we would start with you, Penny, and then we move over to Dimitro at the end.
Well, since we've really got the private sector here and present, I would wish for them to take the chance to become involved. The people of Ukraine are extraordinary, quite ingenious, quite so committed to their future. The resources, the natural resources within the country, the will of the government to really turn from east to west is so strong. And so I would encourage and wish for, our American businesses to become, I know it's far away, but become more involved in Ukraine. It's incredibly important to us in the United States, and to the world, and to our way of life, and to the kind of government and economy and humanity that we want to live. So thank you.
Thank you.
Gazprom is now a loss-making enterprise. The Russian business model is collapsing. Putin is ruining his country. And he's putting out feelers through China and Brazil to try to freeze this conflict, which means that he has already understood that he cannot achieve the original war aims, which was to conquer all of Ukraine and to bring Ukraine down to the level of Russian folklore. He now understands that. In another year or two, we might actually be able to restore international law and restore Ukraine's international borders. We just need to stay the course.
Well, thank you. When I was out of office, I was so frustrated about not being able to do anything for Ukraine. I actually loaded up a lorry from my local town and drove it to the Polish border to deliver supplies to Ukraine. And I think maybe odd to quote Gandhi, who was a pacifist when it comes to this, but you should act as if you want to deliver the change you want to see in the world. So everyone should ask, what can I do for Ukraine? If you're a business, can I invest in Ukraine? Can I at least visit Ukraine and have a look where I could invest? If you're an insurer, can I insure ships in the Black Sea? If you're a foreign minister, ask yourself, what countries can I win over to the cause of Ukraine? If you're a defense minister, have a look and see if you have any spare weapons you can give to Ukraine, and look at the permissions that you put on those weapons so we can make sure we hit Russian soldiers before they actually get into Ukraine. If you're involved in cultural industries or other things, think of what you can do to partner with Ukraine. Something Britain is working on now is a 100-year partnership with Ukraine on everything from twinning our towns to universities, to school visits, to trips, to cultural institutions, everything we can do. Let's be frank about this. This country, Ukraine, has chosen a path to join us in the Euro-Atlantic, in the West, with all that means for their economy, their society, their politics, and everything else. And we've got to support them in that choice, because Putin wants to stop them making that choice. So everyone should ask, what can I do for Ukraine? And if we all do that, there's no way we can't win.
I think it's important to be united, to work all together for growth of Ukraine. Italy is a country with a real economy, industry and agriculture. The private sector is strongly engaged in Ukraine. They want to invest in Ukraine, they want to work in Ukraine, they want to be present in the public procurement. I think the message coming from Ukraine is positive, because your candidacy is helping, a candidacy as full member of the European Union, it's helping your country, because it's a good message for inviting the private sector for investment in Ukraine. In many sectors. I underline the new investments in the mining sector is crucial for the reconstruction. We are ready also in the railway sector, because there are very important companies also today here work in this sector. But it's possible also to work in the space sector. If we want to have a big contribution for your growth and for your full membership in the European Union, we are ready for doing more. The private sector in Italy is very active, not only at big companies, but also, as I said, 4 million of small and medium-sized companies. They want to be present in Ukraine, also in food sector, for example, also in fashion sector. This is possible to work hard for your growth. It's possible also to organize a strong cooperation between different European and not all North American companies for investing in your country. Also today, for paving the way for more investments in the next years, but working for peace now is possible also to work for, you will be part of the European market union. This is important for our companies, paving the way for the next years. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yes, Chancellor and yourself, you mentioned this phrase, it's in the people, and a story, a very quick story immediately popped up on my mind. In late 2022, I was walking my dog in the evening, and I ran into a young gentleman, 18, maybe 19 years old, and he said, "Wow, it's so cool, Minister is walking his dog in the evening." And we started chatting, and he told me, Ukraine will never recover from all this damage that was inflicted on us, and I just don't see a future here. So I will leave. And I said to him, recall what happened with Europe after Second World War. The damage was much worse, but Europe had the will and had a friend, the United States of America, to recover. And now you want to emigrate to Europe. Believe in recovery of Ukraine. We can recover and we will. And some months later, I ran into him again. He was still there. And I said, so you did not leave. And he said, I checked your words on internet, which is good. Young people never trust ministers, so they go on Wikipedia. And you were right. Europe was much worse damaged, and it recovered. I'm staying. Please remember, there are millions of Ukrainian men and women who hold up because they believe in recovery. And please act today to help their dream come true. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And by these encouraging words, be brave like a Ukrainian man, staying, investing, defending, believing in the future. I would like to leave you now with the upcoming discussion, how you could be brave like a Ukrainian to invest, to find a new business case in Ukraine. And one day in the future, we don't know when it will be, but that there will be one day where you could all say, I invested into Ukraine, and now we are celebrating the European Union together from Luhansk to Lisbon. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here on this panel with us today.